Hey guys, my name is Robert, and I'm a master barber and the owner and founder of the Mailroom Barber Co. I'm 25 years old, and I've been cutting hair for 6 or 7 years now, actually. So today I want to talk to you guys about making personal decisions. How do you make a hard decision when you have a tough choice to make and it's not super clear what the outcome is? So first, we need to, before we even think about the decision or anything like that, we really have to set out what our values are and what our goals are. So let's talk about how to do that. First thing you need to ask when you're trying to figure out what you value, because it feels kind of natural. It's like, well, I like being alive, I like having fun, I like being healthy, I like having friends, So you're like, well, I value those things. Or maybe like you value stuff. You're like, well, I value my Xbox, or I value food, or whatever. But we really need to drill down into what is the most important to me and why is it most important to me. So I'll give you an example of some of mine. One of my big personal values is I want to have good physical fitness. So how that helps me making decisions is if I'm in the grocery store and I'm looking at ice cream or, sweet potatoes, I'm going to pick the sweet potatoes because my physical fitness is important to me and I want to be healthy, and ice cream doesn't contribute to me being healthy. So that's a value of mine. Another value is integrity. So it's really important to me to be honest, and that has helped me make so many decisions because I could see like, okay, I could cut a corner here and maybe make some money, or I could cut a corner here and maybe if someone didn't find out, it'll be, I could just get away with it. But having it written down somewhere that I value integrity and being honest, that completely shuts off my choice, my ability to make a bad decision there, because now I can go against it, but then I'm going to feel bad knowing that I went against what I already decided I want, which is integrity. So to find your values, just ask the question, what is important to me? So if that's your friends, then you really value relationships. If that's playing games and having a good time, then you really value your hobbies and you really value recreation, or the freedom to do the things you want to do. And that's really important because once we get into making personal decisions, we have to view decisions as a trade-off. You're going to lose something by getting this thing. So, if you decide to go to school, then you're deciding not to do whatever else you could do with that time during the day, and vice versa. So then we need to think about how we make goals. I'm a big goal setter. I love setting personal goals and company goals. And the best way to do that is to really just know what you want the future to look like. Setting goals can be kind of a daunting thing, but really all you need to do is write down, what do I want the future of my life to look like? And then answer that question. So you could say maybe like, well, when I'm 30, I want to own a car or own a house, or I want to be in great shape or whatever. And then the next step after that is you look at, okay, well, where am I right now? Maybe I'm not in the best shape. Maybe I don't have a car. Maybe I don't have a house. So then you can immediately say, okay, well, my goal is save money and buy a car. Save money, buy a house, that sort of thing. So we need to know that so that we have clear direction. If we have clear direction, then a lot of our decisions can be made for us pretty easily. So like one of my values is a healthy marriage, and so my goal is to have a great relationship with my wife. So what I can do is I can subtract what our relationship is right now, which is pretty good, but I'm like, it could be better. So what I could do is I could say, okay, well, I need to do things that get us closer. So what could that be? Maybe we set a date night or whatever. So then my goal becomes have one date night a week with my wife. And that gets me closer towards the goal of having the healthiest marriage we can. So now that we've got some values, now we've got some goals, let's think about the actual decision we need to make. So I'm going to walk through the steps of this, and then we're going to walk through an example decision that I had to make when I was trying to decide between becoming a barber or going to college. So now that we've developed core values and goals, let's look at step 2, which is defining the decision and the problem that it solves. Okay, so Einstein said if you gave me an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes solving it. So he says that because if we have a really clear understanding of what the problem is, that'll usually give us a pretty clear understanding of what we need to do to fix it. So that's the first thing we need to do with our decision. So we need to ask, what problem is this decision solving? So say you're like, you're trying to decide whether or not you want to buy a bike. So you're like, if I buy this bike, what problem is that going to solve? Well, it could get me to work, or it could get me to school, or it could get me to my friend's house or whatever, or it could help me exercise. Does that line up with my values? Does that line up with my goals? Is that a problem that I'm actually even having? So we really need to define what the problem is so that we can know how to solve it and if it's even worth solving. Next thing we need to do is we need to make a pros and cons list. So I'm sure you've heard of that before, and the reason you've heard of it is because it's super helpful. It sounds kind of cliche to make a pros and cons list, but that's because it's actually super helpful and it can really help you make a decision pretty clearly. So basically we just have to ask, what is the benefit of this and what's the drawback? So what's the positive thing that's going to happen if I do this? What's the negative thing that's going to happen if I do this? And vice versa. So then step 4 is to set a deadline for when you need to make the decision. So that's the thing, we can really put off decisions, and before you know it, it's months later and you haven't even thought about it because you just wanted to avoid it and push it off. So set a deadline for when you're going to make the decision. And then step 5 is to make it happen and treat it like an experiment. So to make it happen, you need to actually schedule it out. So schedule when you're going to do it. If it's buying the bike, schedule out, I'm going to go buy a bike on this day, and what are my next steps? Maybe my next steps are save up $100 by then, or go to the bike shop and figure out which type of bike is going to be right for me. List out your next steps. But a big thing here is that you want to be okay with failure, because you need to treat decisions like experiments. So, in our culture, we're extremely afraid of failure, but that can keep us from doing things a lot of times. So like, with the buying a bike example, if you're super afraid of failure, you could think, well, what if I buy a bike and I can't even ride it, or I don't like it, or it falls apart, or whatever. Like or I fall and bust my head. Like there's a lot of option for failure here. But if we look at it as an experiment, we can say, okay, that wasn't a waste of time because I learned something from it. So it's super important to treat things like an experiment like that. So let's walk through an example decision that I made a few years ago. Should I be a barber or go to college? So I'll walk through this. So I had to develop some core values and some goals. And so I knew I wanted to be independent. I didn't want to live with my mom. That was a really important thing for me. I wanted to have a job that felt fulfilling, and I wanted to work with my hands. But I also had the option to go to school. So it was really hard to make a choice because I wasn't super sure what the future was going to be. It wasn't very clear to me which one would work out. And when you have to make a tough decision, that's usually why it's a decision, is because it's not clear what the future is going to hold. So I knew what was important to me, and I had to define the decision. So instead of just having like, well, I could maybe get into the hair industry somewhere and I could maybe go to school somewhere, I narrowed it down to here's the decision. I'm either going to go to Full Sail University or I'm going to get an apprenticeship at this barbershop. So now I've got two very clear options, and I know the problem that I'm trying to solve. I want a career. I want a job that I can do for a long time, and something that brings me fulfillment and happiness, but also pays the bills. So the problem I'm trying to solve here is, which direction should I go to get a career that's going to be fulfilling and make me money over time. So the next thing we need to do is make a pros and cons list. So I've got a piece of paper here, and I'm going to write out pros and cons of being a barber. So and from what I knew, I was like, okay, I can work with my hands. I know I'll be able to make money, even at least a little bit. I wasn't sure how much I'd be able to make or anything like that, but I knew I'll be able to make some money and have a good job. I knew I could start it right now because I knew a place I could go do an apprenticeship. I knew it wouldn't cost me a lot of money to become a barber. Okay, but let's think about some of the cons. Well, if I became a barber, then I wouldn't be going to college, so I wouldn't have a college degree. So I'm just writing this down. Let's see. Another con, because I've got a trade-off here, because if I don't go to school, I'll be missing out on the things I could have gotten from school. So another con would be I was thinking about going to school for graphic design, so I wouldn't learn graphic design. I was thinking about going to school out of state, so I wouldn't be able to move away. All right, so now let's look at some of the pros and cons of going to college. So for me, the school I wanted to go to was very expensive, which this actually ended up being the main reason I didn't go, other than the fact that I just really wanted to be a barber pretty bad. So that's a huge one. College, it was going to be too expensive. So then a pro, though, would be learning graphic design. But the problem here is that I wasn't really sure whether I would like it or not, which is where I can't stress enough that you have to treat a personal decision like an experiment. So I had these listed out, and after listing them out, it was pretty clear to me that I wanted to be a barber, because it was like, okay, well, that's not going to cost me a lot of money to do. It's nowhere near as expensive as going to college. I can do it right now, and if I change my mind and I want to go to college instead, that's fine. I can just try to get accepted into a cheaper college. And if that doesn't work out, then it just doesn't work out. But either way, I treated it like an experiment, and I said, well, I'm going to try barbering. And I wasn't going to beat myself up if I failed or it didn't work out. All right, so then I set a deadline. I was like, okay, I need to decide by Friday which one I'm doing. Friday came around. I've been thinking about it all week, because that's something you really need to do. You really need to work it overnight, let it sit with you for a while. And I came to the decision that I wanted to be a barber. So that brings us to step 5, which is make it happen and treat it like an experiment. So I listed out what's the date I'm going to do it. I said, okay, on Monday, I'm going to go talk to the barbershop and see if I can get an apprenticeship. And then I listed out my next steps. My next steps are talk to the barbershop about an apprenticeship, get all the tools I need, and start learning how to cut hair. So I just started doing those next steps in order. And for me, barbering really worked out. I'm really glad with the decision I made, but it also taught me how to make tough decisions. So I hope this is helpful for you guys in making tough decisions. We all face tough decisions at one point or another, so it's really critical that you know how to make an important decision, so that your life can end up and you can go the direction that you actually want to go. So yeah, I hope this was helpful for you guys. Take care.